Chapter 926. Yuchi family's patriarch. Their current chief commander. These powerhouses cultivators originally didn't really believe it. These killers from the assassin hall were obviously targeting the world mercenary group. No, to put it more accurately, they were targeting Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's companions' words were definitely to make use of their strength to go against these killers. Dark forces? They had not heard of the dark forces for a long time. Hadn't they been expelled from Nirvana realm 1,000 years ago? How could they possibly appear again? Yuchi family's patriarch stepped forward from the crowd as his gaze swept past those black-robed men with a terrified expression. Dark forces. These people, really are from the dark forces. Tong Ziqing gave him a cold stare, not having any good impression of Yuchi family's patriarch. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. Anyway, I've already said what I should say and I've done my best. Yuchi family's patriarch went into deep thoughts. These killers, no matter if they were from the dark forces or not, all of them had ill intentions. Ever since these people appeared, no matter which powerhouse the other party belonged to, as long as they obstructed them, they would directly tear them into pieces. Moreover, their methods were extremely cruel. Moreover, the various powerhouses were indeed unable to leave. The minute they had any thoughts of leaving, these black-robed men would directly kill those people who wanted to leave. Most importantly, these black-robed men's target was the same as the various powerhouses, for the god relic. From the current situation, these black-robed men's abilities were obviously above Yiqing Luo's. Rather than snatching the god relic from these black-robed men whose abilities were unfathomable, they might as well snatch it from the extremely weak Yiqing Luo who was covered in blood. Thinking in this way, Yuchi family's patriarch followed Tong Ziqing's words. This patriarch chooses to believe what this young lady said. To tell the truth, my son Yuchi Peng had died under the dark forces' sinister forbidden arts. Saying this, Yuchi family's patriarch's expression turned sorrowful and grave as he raised one hand and covered his eyes. As though he was grieving for his own son. Looking at these people's skills, as well as their vicious attacks, they are absolutely from the dark forces. They want to disguise themselves as assassins from the assassin hall, attempting to frame the assassin hall. Patriarch Yuchi's voice suddenly became extremely heavy and solemn. The dark forces secretly sneaked into the Nirvana realm from the plane of Nirvana realm. If we find out about their identities, they will definitely kill them to silence them. The patriarch of the Yuchi family was one of the 4 great aristocratic families. His words were naturally more important than those young mercenaries from the world group. Immediately, the various forces became anxious and uneasy. They all looked at the Yuchi family head, waiting for his suggestion. I, Yuchi Hongwei, head of the House of Yuchi, hereby declare my intention to cooperate with my fellow comrades. Let us put aside all our daily unhappiness and fight together for the sake of survival. Immediately, many people from other forces raised their arms in agreement. When the other forces saw this, they naturally couldn't be left alone. Patriarch Yuchi's complexion improved slightly. He was just about to ask Tong Ziqing more about the situation. However, the girl's face was cold as she turned around without looking back. She waved the weapon in her hand and continued to fight with the black-robed men. Patriarch Yuchi's expression turned stiff as he awkwardly shifted his gaze away and gathered everyone to join in the battle. After these 400 over-cultivators joined in the battle, these dark forces' black-robed men apparently couldn't keep up with them. Chapter 927. Yiqing Luo was finally able to extricate herself slightly and do some simple treatment for the injuries on her body. Mu Zifei also restrained his profound qi and followed Yiqing Luo to retreat to the battlefield. Without saying a word, he took out healing pills and tools from his space pocket and bandaged Yiqing Luo's wounds. Some injuries couldn't be bandaged by Yiqing Luo alone. Yiqing Luo didn't refuse Mu Zifei's good intentions and let him bandage her. But her gaze was fixed on the few people in front who were obviously not Leopard Saint Technique's opponents. She didn't see Mu Zifei's increasingly ashen face as he bandaged her wounds. And when he was treating the wound on Yiqing Luo's shoulder, he had just unsealed her acupuncture point when he saw a lump of blood gushing out. Yiqing Luo groaned in pain. This sound completely ignited Mu Zifei's anger. You also know pain? Yi Qing Luo was startled and turned back to meet the anger in Mu Zifei's eyes. Throwing caution to the wind and tormenting your body, will you only be satisfied when you collapse? Mu Zifei's words carried a thick anger, but the movements of his hands were extremely gentle, for fear of hurting her. Yi Qing Luo's eyes revealed a trace of warmth. She lightly hooked her lips and smiled. I'm fine. I'm a doctor, I can see whether you're fine or not. Mu Zifei's brows were tightly knitted. If I suggest you start to rest now and don't do any strenuous actions, will you agree? Yi Qing Luo silently lowered her eyes. Seeing this expression, Mu Zifei also understood that it was useless to say more. He pursed his lips and lightly sighed. Why don't you let the overlord take action? As long as DMO Xian took action, no matter how strong the so-called dark forces were, they wouldn't have the power to resist. Why did they have to make themselves riddled with scars? Mu Zifei really didn't understand this approach. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes trembled as her gaze swept over the injuries on her body. Her expression was very calm and didn't show the slightest bit of shock because of the injuries on her body. Her expression remained indifferent. She slowly shook her head and said with a faint smile, if everything depends on Xian, then my existence is meaningless. It's because of your existence that he will take action. How is it meaningless? Mu Zifei frowned tightly. Just because of this ridiculous reason, she refused DMO Xian's help. That's not what I meant. Yi Qing Luo shut her eyes as she sighed softly. I want to become even stronger, to become your assistants, and not to make use of my relationship with Xian to achieve my goal. In this world, there are many reliable people, but in the end, we can only rely on ourselves. It wasn't that she didn't want to believe that DMO Xian would protect her at all times. It wasn't that he didn't believe that his brothers could be relied on. However, what she wanted was to become stronger herself, and not rely on others to become stronger. The Leopard Saint technique was a rare opponent. If, under the stimulation of the Leopard Saint technique, she could flexibly use the profound energy that she had broken through to the Earth Profound Realm, at least in the Western continent, she would be able to properly protect her companions. If she really sensed the danger of death, she would seek help from DMO Xian. Don't even think about it. Di Zun has already left. Mu Zifei helped her wrap up the wound on her shoulder and specially added some medicinal powder to stop the bleeding and pain. Only then did he put away the treatment tools. Gone. Yi Qing Luo was stunned as she subconsciously searched for DMO Xian's figure. Indeed, within 100 meters of the entire Ling King's tomb, there wasn't a single trace of DMO Xian. Where did he go? Because she let herself get injured and refused to open her mouth to ask for his help. So he was angry? Yi Qing Luo pursed her pale lips. Actually, if it was her. If DMO Xian forced her to watch him get injured and not intervene, she would also be angry. Chapter 928. Thinking about it from another perspective, Yi Qing Luo suddenly felt that her request was too much. Ah, a miserable shriek was heard. Tong Ziqing's petite body was flung out heavily. She crashed onto the ground as she spat out a mouthful of blood. Sister Ziqing. Kitty Li's face was extremely pale as blood trickled down from the corner of her mouth. Ziqing. Yi Qing Luo wanted to stand up, but she had no energy at all. Her face was slightly pale as she looked at Mu Zifei. Mu Zifei had already packed up the treatment tools as he stood up and looked at the other end of the battle. You need to rest until the medicine takes effect. Before that, we will help you fight for time to heal. He lifted his foot and took a few steps towards the battlefield before stopping again. You should also have healing elixirs on you that are stronger than mine. At the very least, you need to rest for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Saying that, Mu Zifei had already pulled out his soft sword as he charged towards the Leopard Saint technique's direction. Kitty Li also heard Mu Zifei's words. She took a look at Yi Qing Luo, who was sitting on the ground with a pale face. She took another look at Tong Ziqing, who was lying on the ground with a mouth full of blood. Kitty Li bit her lower lip as her lively eyes stared deeply at Yi Qing Luo. Sister, Kitty will help you fight for time to rest." Saying that, she turned her head and with a leap of her legs, she charged towards the leopard saint technique once again. Yi-Ching Luo's brows twitched as she realized that Kitty Lee might be doing something incredible as she immediately got up to stop her. "Kitty, come back." But her legs were weak as she sat on the ground powerlessly. "Kitty." Kitty Lee's figure was like a nimble cat as she kept on scuttling. That long and slender black tail had already shot out of her robe. She stood in front of the leopard saint technique, her eyes as pure as a cat's, full of determination. She wanted to protect her sister. Protect her sister. Even if she had to exhaust her own beast power, she must fight for time for her sister. The little girl's body suddenly shot out an extremely intense black light. A black cat's shadow appeared behind the girl. That black cat extended its sharp claws as it bared its fangs and placed it by its mouth as it stroked lightly. Indistinctly, an extremely sharp cat's cry could be heard. Meow, it was a cry that seemed to be able to penetrate one's heart, causing one's soul to tremble. The shadow of the black cat slowly spread behind Kitty Lee, and finally turned into a shadow with the size of a tiger. Erect ears. His long tail kept swaying. From time to time, he would lick Cat's Claw's tongue. That shadow was vivid and lifelike. The expression on Kitty Lee's face had also abruptly faded away from her usual innocence and innocence. What replaced it was a wild and murderous expression. It was as if he had become another person. No, it should be a different soul. Kitty Lee's body and soul were no longer Kitty Lee. Instead, it was this black cat shadow. Meow, Kitty Lee squinted her extremely lazy eyes, and the corners of her mouth curled into a sexy, cold arc. Her wild eyes were fixated on Yi-Ching Luo. Furrowing her brows, Kitty Lee snorted impatiently. "You summoned me just to protect a weak human like you?" She scoffed lightly, extremely disdainful. "You're indeed just a waste, Meow. After interacting with humans, you've really assimilated yourself with them, Meow." Yi-Ching Luo's brows creased, not liking this Kitty Lee's tone and expression. Chapter 929. Beastman Races. Forbidden technique? Which meant that this special ability was prohibited by the Beastman race. Then, Kitty Lee had used this special ability, wouldn't it be? As if he could read Yi-Ching Luo's thoughts, Old Man Sung explained, this special ability is also known as. After using this ability, the Beastman race's hidden beast consciousness will be awakened, reaching the state of unity of mind and body. This way, they will be able to display all the power of the Beastman race. And once this ability is used up, the beast's power will be exhausted and the Beastman race's body will fall into a deep sleep, approximately 3 days in the Nirvana realm. Which meant the cat beast in Kitty Lee's body had awakened. The current Kitty Lee was a cat beast in the Beastman race. You don't have to worry that this cat beast will do anything to harm Kitty Lee's body or any of you. Old Man Sung continued to explain, even if she completely inherited the cat beast's power, she is still Kitty Lee and has Kitty Lee's memories. Like what Kitty Lee said, she was summoned by Kitty Lee to protect Yi-Ching Luo. She would complete her mission and fall into a deep sleep in Kitty Lee's body. Yi-Ching Luo shook her head slowly. "I'm not worried that she will hurt me, but..." Kitty Lee did this. Once the cat beast's power is exhausted, at this juncture, it will be very easy. The leopard saint technique was so powerful that Yi-Ching Luo couldn't guarantee that she could still defend against it and protect the sleeping Kitty Lee at the same time. So lass, become stronger and protect them. Old Man Sung sighed. The current you has enough ability to pass the second level of the Purgatory Tower. Perhaps, the third level also has a chance. After everything is over and you are sure that your body is fine, you can start to challenge the Purgatory Tower. Yi-Ching Luo responded softly. Her pair of charming eyes were gradually dyed with the radiance of unswerving determination. Yes. She wanted to become stronger. Only by being strong, surpassing everything, could she protect the people she wanted to protect. There was no need to fear the leopard saint technique. There was no need to fear the so-called Lord. Kitty Lee's extremely lazy eyes swept across Yi-Ching Luo, who was covered in wounds. Forget it, no matter how bad this human was, she was still the one chosen by the cat beast. As the spirit of the cat beast, she would do her best to protect the people she wanted to protect. When she turned her head to look at the leopard saint technique, her expression suddenly turned sharp. All the hair on his body stood on end as if he was staring at something dangerous. That was the acute sense of a cat. Immediately after, Kitty Lee took lazy and elegant steps, approaching the leopard saint technique. After inheriting the cat beast's power, Kitty Lee's strength had more than doubled. The sharp cat claws grew new nails again. It was as sharp as a machete and could cut through iron like mud. However, a sky profound supremacy. Moreover, a power that was at least at the pinnacle was not something that an ordinary cat beast could contend against. Yiqing Luo watched with her own eyes as Kitty Lee fell down again and again under the confrontation with the leopard saint technique, but stood up without knowing the pain. The increasingly shrill meows of the cats shook the hearts of the humans, causing them to feel a stabbing pain. After about the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, Kitty Lee exhausted the last bit of the cat beast's strength and fell from the sky covered in wounds. Kitty! Yiqing Luo knitted her brows tightly. A burst of energy suddenly rushed out from her feet and the azure dew ring on her fingertips began to heat up. Yiqing Luo's figure swiftly extended as she steadily caught Kitty Lee. The little figure nestled in her arms. Quick-witted and slightly hazy beautiful eyes gazed deeply at Yiqing Luo's face. After a long time, Kitty Lee's lips curled into a smile as she stretched out her hand to touch Yiqing Luo's face. "Sister, it's good that you're all right." Her voice was gentle and slow. If one didn't listen carefully, they wouldn't be able to hear it. Following that hand which was covering her face, slowly drooped down. Chapter 930. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with a biting cold intent. Her extremely pale pink lips pursed tightly, the expression on her face was calm and indifferent. After a long while, she restrained the emotions in her eyes and placed Kitty Lee at the place where she was resting. There was an enchantment set up by Mu Zifei here. It was enough to protect Kitty Lee from being hurt by other cultivators. Leopard Saint Technique's eyes were filled with a perverted sinister smile. His hands were full of fresh blood, that was the blood of those who came forward to die without a care for their lives. Raising his hand, he placed his finger on his lips under the black veil, as if he was licking the fresh blood on his hand. That look was like a bloodthirsty devil. Seeing Yiqing Luo slowly walking towards him, Leopard Saint Technique's sinister eyes flashed a trace of ridicule. "Have you recovered? I love to see the scene of prey struggling at death's door." Yiqing Luo's expression was cold as she looked at Leopard Saint Technique indifferently, turning a deaf ear to his ridicule. Earth profound energy was released from her body like a raging storm. Her whole body was surging with profound energy as she bared her fangs and brandished her claws. Hurricanes interweaved, covering the sky like a black curtain, covering thousands of brilliance in an instant. The azure dew ring's divine weapon power was also released at this moment. No matter what impact it would have on herself if she released all her power. At this moment, she had to rely on releasing all her power. Even if that kind of hatred, anger and irritation eroded her body and mind, making her feel angry and bloodthirsty. That target would only be Leopard Saint Technique. The biting cold in her eyes was like a sharp blade, scraping Leopard Saint Technique's skin. She didn't waste any words with Leopard Saint Technique. The glower flame fan in her hand had already swept up a violent hurricane, attacking Leopard Saint Technique. The attack was completely different from before. Yiqing Luo didn't hesitate in her attack. The calm and determined light in her eyes made her mind extremely clear. The combination of the silver silk and profound energy was fierce, with an austere and deathly aura. One move after another, Leopard Saint Technique was forced to retreat step by step. And under a more sinister move, Leopard Saint Technique's chest was hit by Yiqing Luo's silver silk. That long silver silk was as fine as hair. It went straight through Leopard Saint Technique's chest. Fresh blood dripped down along the silver thread. Leopard Saint Fei's eyes immediately turned scarlet. He had been repeatedly insulted by a little earth profound practitioner. Wouldn't he be a joke among the dark forces? This damned little girl. He was actually able to recover so quickly in such a short period of time and come up with a strategy to deal with him based on the previous attack. Only 15 years old. Such a person was too terrifying. If he stayed, he would definitely be a formidable opponent. Little girl, you're courting death. Leopard Saint Technique's anger rose once again. His palms immediately set off a terrifying palm wind, striking towards Yiqing Luo. A strong pressure pressed towards Yiqing Luo's face. Yiqing Luo knitted her brows and reacted swiftly, displaying her footwork to evade immediately. The remnant power of the powerful and enraged palm energy still brushed past her back. Yiqing Luo cried out in pain as she endured the intense pain coming from her back. She opened her glower flame fan and set off a wind blade. Then, he used the silver threads to create a protective shield in front of him. The Leopard Saint Technique snorted and soared into the sky. His figure instantly disappeared into the air. Yiqing Luo's eyes gradually sunk as she felt the dangerous airflow in the air. Behind her, a void split open. A sharp claw was about to clasp Yiqing Luo's shoulder. Chapter 931. Her injured back scraped against the gravel on the ground. Instantly Yiqing Luo frowned in pain, her brows kept trembling. Her forehead was already oozing cold sweat. Her petite body was trembling slightly. Yiqing Luo gritted her teeth, panting heavily as she forced herself to stand up. She could clearly feel the feeling of liquid flowing out from her back. Her entire back felt extremely itchy. The prickling and itchy feeling was unbearable. TSK. I'm starting to like you more and more. Leopard Saint Technique said so, but the profound energy he used was merciless. His so-called liking. It should be, more and more he wanted to play her to death bit by bit. Yiqing Luo's footwork became faster and faster. But she could only avoid the fatal attack on the vital parts. If she used the blink movement secret technique now, she probably wouldn't be so restrained. But, these people were from the dark forces. Their background was not clear. Once she used the blink movement secret technique, it was very likely to expose the Azure Dew bracelet and the Purgatory Tower. If the dark forces knew about this, they would probably pursue her even more fiercely than now. Leopard Saint Technique's Achilles heel, what exactly was it? She had to think of a way to solve the Leopard Saint Technique as soon as possible. She absolutely could not die. And absolutely could not allow Leopard Saint Technique to be arrogant. Otherwise, not only would she lose her own life. Her brothers, her companions would all lose their lives here. Based on her own physical condition, she couldn't hold on for too long. Ah Xian, he would definitely rush back. She believed that Ah Xian wouldn't leave angrily regardless of her life or death. Thinking of this, Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly lit up. She looked down at the protective shield surrounding her. Taking a deep breath, she directly rushed towards Leopard Saint Technique. After a few strikes, the protective shield formed by the silver threads had already been smashed into pieces by Leopard Saint Technique's attack. This was the moment. Yiqing Luo didn't retreat because of the broken protective shield. But she directly went against Leopard Saint Technique. Those broken silver threads were like vines, rapidly entangling Leopard Saint Technique. The protective shield was formed by the silver threads. It was smashed into pieces, which was equivalent to the broken silver threads. Leopard Saint Technique didn't pay attention to those silver threads. Instantly, more than 10 silver threads pierced into his heart. This was not the end. Yiqing Luo saw that her plan was successful and her lips curled into a cold smile. You didn't expect it, right? The glower flame fan and I are one body. My profound grade upgrade and the silver threads attached to the glower flame fan are also controlled by my thoughts. As soon as he finished speaking, the dozen or so silver threads that had pierced Leopard's sacred technique's heart began to spread rapidly throughout his body. It continuously penetrated his internal organs. Fresh blood soaked the black clothes of the Leopard Saint Technique. A bloody smell lingered between the two of them. Damn it. Leopard Saint Technique only felt a stabbing pain in his body. Those sharp silver threads were constantly cutting his internal organs. In the depths of his eyes, wisps of mysterious enrich darted about in his fury. Bitch! You will pay a painful price for your actions. The scarlet eyes of the Leopard Saint Technique burned with raging fury, intertwining with the mysterious enrich. He raised his hand, grabbed a handful of silver threads on his chest, and pulled it out. Fresh blood splattered all over the ground. Leopard Saint Technique didn't care. If it wasn't for the cloud pulling power between his brows, Yiqing Luo would have thought that this person couldn't feel pain. A cold glint flashed past the corner of Leopard Saint Technique's eyes. He grabbed that handful of silver threads, curling it into a circle and wrapped it around his wrist. Yiqing Luo's expression was shocked, and just as she was about to cut off this handful of silver threads. But the speed was not comparable to Leopard Saint Technique. Just with the silver threads, Leopard Saint Technique swung his long arm and pulled Yiqing Luo towards him. Chapter 932. Little girl, don't worry. I won't take your life for now. A cold voice sounded beside her ear. A chill ran down Yiqing Luo's spine. She saw his hand tightly clasping the tendons of her wrist. The Leopard Saint Technique would not take her life. But he wanted to completely destroy everything she had. They wanted to cripple her cultivation, dig out her profound heart jade, and turn her into a cripple so that she would be at the mercy of the dark forces? No. She would never let the Leopard Saint Technique destroy her. Even if it was destroyed, he had to drag the Leopard Saint Technique along with him. Yiqing Luo's pupils shot out a piercingly cold and determined glint. As if sensing her thoughts, the azure water ring heated up slightly. His heart suddenly surged with a powerful energy. Just as Leopard Saint's skill was about to sever Yiqing Luo's wrist tendons. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath, shut her eyes tightly and suddenly opened them. The light that shot out from his eyes instantly turned into a sharp blade and pierced straight into the Leopard Holy Technique's neck. The internal organs of the Leopard Saint Technique did not seem to suffer any internal injuries from being pierced and shattered. What about the neck? Unless the Leopard Saint Technique was not a monster. Otherwise, if his neck was pierced by Xian energy, even if he did not die, he would definitely not be able to continue fighting. Leopard Saint Technique apparently didn't expect that at this moment, Yiqing Luo still had the energy to retaliate. He quickly moved his neck to avoid the attack of the sharp blade. Just as he dodged the first blade, a second blade came slashing at him. The Leopard Saint Technique was one step too slow. The sharp blade didn't pierce his neck, but directly pierced through his shoulder. The fresh blood splattered onto Yiqing Luo's face. He actually dodged it. Yiqing Luo's tightly knitted brows creased into a few wrinkles. 2 consecutive sharp blades missed the Leopard Saint Technique's neck. Even if she still had the strength to create 2 more sharp blades, the Leopard Saint Technique was also vigilant. Sure enough, Leopard Saint Technique angrily locked onto Yiqing Luo's neck. His sinister eyes were filled with intense anger. He clenched his fingers tightly, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. I'm going to kill you. This was the first time he was injured to this extent by someone other than his lord. The other party was only a 15-year-old human girl. Anger, shame, unwillingness, all sorts of emotions spread from the bottom of his heart. Black chi surged in his eyes, and his murderous aura grew stronger. Yiqing Luo only felt that the breath of death was getting closer and closer to her. She was completely powerless to break free from the 5 fingers of the Leopard Saint Technique. It was as if all the strength in his body had been sucked out, and he was powerless to retaliate. She couldn't accept this. He didn't want to give up. She didn't want to die here. She didn't want to see the Leopard Sacred Technique still alive to torture her companions. Moreover, she had yet to see Dmo Xian. At this moment, a deafening cry suddenly came from the horizon. A powerful and terrifying force descended from the sky. The Leopard Saint Technique was directly knocked aside. Yiqing Luo fell from midair. For some time, Yiqing Luo didn't feel any pain from falling onto the ground. Instead, she fell into a wide and incomparably warm embrace. The faint scent of sandalwood lingered in her nose, making her feel at ease. Ah, Xian, it was him. He came back just in time. Yiqing Luo's curly long eyelashes fluttered as she tried her best to straighten her eyes, which had lost focus after her throat was grabbed. The minute she opened her eyes, she didn't meet with that pair of deep black peach blossom eyes, but a pair. Azure blue, huge, like a pair of huge gemstone eyes, like the vast starry sky. Chapter 933. It was a little pungent, but Yiqing Luo had no time to care about that smell. She stared in shock at this huge dragon head. Following that, her heart pounded violently. Dragon. A blue-colored huge dragon. The arm around her waist tightened slightly, as though he was unhappy with her neglect towards him. Yiqing Luo turned her head around in a daze as her gaze congealed on the man's peerless face. That rosy lips were slightly pursed as his brows revealed some displeasure. You don't want me to interfere in your battle, I respect you. I spent so much effort to find this human dragon to assist you, but you just stare at a dragon in a daze. A low and hoarse voice rang in her ears. The warm male breath sprayed onto Yiqing Luo's earlobe. It caused the young lady's tender neck to pop out with beads of sweat. He squinted his peach blossom eyes in satisfaction as his voice became softer. Why, I'm not as good looking as a dragon. This tone. Why did it sound like he was jealous? Yiqing Luo moved unnaturally in his arms as a blush surfaced on her cheeks. I'm just astonished. Ah, Zhan isn't he? Wasn't Long Yun Zhan being controlled by the profound Yin Qi? Why would he transform into a dragon to help her? Your blood awakened his rationality. Dmo Xian gave a light harumph as his tone was filled with displeasure. After he regained consciousness, he still retained the memories of being controlled and was unable to face what he had done, so he went into hiding. Yiqing Luo was stunned, recalling the sword that Long Yun Zhan stabbed Yan Xiaoyi. Recalling Long Yun Zhan's continuous attacks on her, taking her life. All these, Long Yun Zhan still remembered. He couldn't face them. I found him at the back mountain of King Ling's tomb and told him about the current situation. Dmo Xian shot a glance at that huge dragon head. That pair of bronze bell-like sapphire blue eyes flashed past a tinge of apology and guilt. Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief. As long as Long Yun Zhan was willing to stand out, that meant that he had already broken free from the profound Yin Qi's control and was fine. As for those matters, Yiqing Luo raised her hand and placed it on that dragon head. Her slender fingertips touched his mouth. Ah, Zhan, none of us will blame you for those things. If you really feel guilty and uneasy, then protect us when we leave the tomb of the Ling King and return to the academy. That pair of azure eyes shone brightly. Immediately after, the huge blue dragon circled in the air, and waves of dragon roars tore through the sky. He lowered his head and his beard straightened as it landed right in front of Yiqing Luo. This was inviting Yiqing Luo to sit on him. The corners of Yiqing Luo's lips curled up slightly, her blood-stained alluring face looked so flirtatious. Dmo Xian released her slender waist and did not stop her. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with gentleness as she regained her senses and gazed at the man behind her as she stretched out her arm to encircle his neck. He tiptoed and planted a light kiss on those rosy lips. She said softly, Xian, I'm sorry for making you worry. Definitely, there won't be a next time. Let me be willful one more time. Wait for me. With that, she flipped over and leaped onto Long Yun Zhan's back. The giant dragon spiraled up to the sky once more, streaking across the sky like a bolt of lightning. Numerous people below fell into a state of shock. Even those 10 black-robed men from the dark forces stared at the sky in shock. Dragon. The blue giant dragon's scales shone like flowing lights. That dragon roar shook everyone's heart. It was actually a dragon. The supreme dragon? The dragon that could only be seen in books. It actually appeared right in front of them. Chapter 934. This wasn't the end yet. What was even more shocking was yet to come. Just as everyone was in a daze from the shock, staring at the blue huge dragon, suddenly, an earth-shattering tiger roar tore through the air. Under the huge dragon, a huge white tiger was suspended in midair. It was said to be huge because it was at least 5 times the size of an ordinary tiger, and it was so sturdy that it made one tremble in fear. That white tiger stood majestically below the blue huge dragon, but it wasn't suppressed by the huge dragon's prestige at all. Its fur was snow white, looking furry. On careful look, one could tell that the fur was as hard as steel. The king word on its forehead was sparkling with radiance. Its fangs were sharp and its claws were hard. White tiger. One of the ancient 4 sacred beasts, hailed as the ancestor of sacred beasts, white tiger. This was even higher than the overlord's 9-tailed fox sacred beast by several grades. What kind of day was today? A legendary dragon had arrived. There was even a legendary holy beast, the white tiger. Heavens! Were they dreaming? Cultivators from various powerhouses had their eyes opened wide, filled with shock and astonishment. They pinched themselves, slapped themselves. But eventually, this huge dragon, this sacred beast white tiger, was still majestically floating in midair. Wait! Wait! Patriarch Yuchi's expression was grave, but he couldn't conceal the greed and envy in his eyes. He raised his head up high, staring at the 2 legendary god-grade sacred beasts as he asked in a trembling voice, This dragon can be confirmed to be the World Group's Vice Group Leader's dragon, then. Where's the sacred beast white tiger? Everyone regained their senses from the shock. They immediately reacted. Right. They were now standing on Yiqing Luo's side, battling against the 10 over people from the dark forces. This supreme dragon was Yiqing Luo's dragon. Then she would be able to deal with these unkillable perverts from the dark forces. But where's that sacred beast white tiger? Was it the dark forces white tiger, or their sides war pet? Very quickly, they got their answer. When the girl on the back of the blue dragon saw the white tiger, her eyes were filled with joy. She opened her arms towards the white tiger and said in a joyful voice, Chi-Chi. When the white tiger heard the call, it turned its huge body, raised its head, and rubbed against the girl's bosom. However, it was simply too big. The girl could only hold on to a small patch of fur on the white tiger's head. The tiger's roar gradually became deeper, as if it was filled with joy. Yes. This holy white tiger was Chi-Chi, who had been in a deep slumber for an entire month. It was 3 times bigger than when he first saw Mu Chi-Chi. Clearly, it had leveled up in its sleep. Or perhaps it was because the current Yiqing Luo had found her profound jade heart and obtained the power of the divine relic. As a battle pet with a blood contract, the battle pet would share its power with its master. The pet's strength would change according to its master's strength. Master, Chi-Chi misses you so much. That childlike voice entered Yiqing Luo's ears. This made Yiqing Luo suddenly stunned. She immediately regained her senses as she stared at Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi, it's you? Yes, master. Chi-Chi can now use the human language to converse with you. Chi-Chi smiled excitedly. That tender and crisp voice was especially lovable. After Yiqing Luo's shock, she was instantly overjoyed. Not only had her Chi-Chi's strength increased, she could even speak in human language. Chapter 935. Hearing Chi-Chi's words, Yiqing Luo suddenly regained her senses. Her gaze immediately fell onto the battlefield below, on Leopard Saint Technique, who was still lying on the ground being treated by the profound Yin Qi as her gaze turned cold. Now wasn't the time to question Chi-Chi. She had to at least get rid of these 10 people from the dark forces. When the blue huge dragon and the sacred beast white tiger's vision were fixed on Leopard Saint Technique. Leopard Saint Technique, who was still fighting for time to treat himself, turned steely green. This trip to Nirvana realm had shocked him greatly. Nirvana realm not only had the beast human race, there were actually dragons and ancient sacred beasts. No wonder His Highness tried so hard to occupy Nirvana realm. Ah Jean, Chi. Let's work together and capture these few people from the dark forces alive. Yi Qing Luo had no intention to kill Leopard Saint Technique, just crippling him was enough. Regarding the dark forces, the things that Guardian Snake knew were definitely not as much as Leopard Saint Technique. Even if Leopard Saint Technique wasn't willing to speak, she had the ability to pry open his mouth. The blue huge dragon let out a long dragon roar. It was mixed with a deafening tiger roar. Two huge shadows leaped down from the sky. The people of the various forces were completely shocked. One was a supreme dragon, and the other was a holy beast, the white tiger. They were both Yi Qing Luo's war pets. How was this possible? How could Yi Qing Luo possibly own such a high-leveled war pet? No wonder. Yi Qing Luo dared to be so arrogant and egotistical. As though she had no fear towards anything. From today onwards, the legend regarding Yi Qing Luo would shake the entire West Continent, and even Nirvana realm. The world group's reputation had completely spread. Leopard Saint Technique and the other 9 cultivators from the dark forces had no way to retaliate under the huge dragon and white tiger's attack. The battle situation had completely reversed at this moment. It was merely half the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Leopard Saint Technique's 2 legs had already been broken by Chi-Chi's thick tiger claws. What Leopard Saint Technique wanted to do to her, Yi Qing Luo had returned it all to him. Picking out his tendons and digging out his profound jade heart. Casually throwing it to a mercenary group. As for the other 9 people from the dark forces, 6 of them died and the remaining 3 suffered the same treatment. These people were brought away by the world group's mercenaries. From the beginning until the end, none of the profound practitioners from the various powers dared to say a word. Yi Qing Luo didn't have the mood to bother about those people. She still needed the major forces to spread the news that the dark forces had already infiltrated the Nirvana realm. At the very least, he wanted to create some ripples in the dark forces. After settling everything, Yi Qing Luo was worried about Yan Xiaoyi's injury, and knew that Long Yunzhan felt guilty towards Yan Xiaoyi. There were also many brothers and sisters who were severely injured and in urgent need of treatment. He didn't stay any longer. He only said to the Yuchi family head, "The Yuchi family head will definitely be under the attention of the dark forces. If you don't want to die, pay attention to any suspicious people." After saying that, he led the dragon, tiger, and a group of brothers out of the Ling King's tomb. No one dared to stop them. Indeed, no one was more qualified than her to possess a divine artifact. After returning to the old house, Holy Thief, who had returned with Xiao Jin and the others, had already found more than 10 highly respected doctors to wait at home. Handing the brothers over to those doctors, Yi Qing Luo rejected the doctor's consultation and directly walked towards her own room. She was covered in blood and injuries and she didn't want her brothers to see it, not willing to make them worry. Moreover, with old man Sung around, the injuries on her would recover very quickly. Just entering the room, Yi Qing Luo saw a hot bathtub in the middle of the room. The fresh lavender fragrance floated over, making her tensed-up body and mind uncontrollably relax. She slowly walked towards the bathtub, as her slender jade fingers unbuttoned the black-colored clothes which had been solidified by the blood. Just as the indecent clothes were half removed, the tightly shut door was pushed open with a bam. The gentle breeze brought along a familiar sandalwood scent. Yi Qing Luo was stunned, and before she could even say a word, she already felt a scorching hot man's body approaching her. Dmo Xian condescendingly gazed at the young lady in front of him. His dark eyes slowly filled with blood, as it was dark and gloomy to the extent that it was terrifying. His scorching gaze slowly swept past her exquisite petite body. His gaze touched the softness in front of her chest, and a feeling which made one's mouth dry instantly attacked him from all directions. Chapter 936. D.M.O. Xian. Yi Qing Luo's face blushed as she bit her lips in anger. Why did he come? She speedily wrapped her underwear up and restrained her body from trembling, trying her best to ignore the heat from his gaze. But unexpectedly, she just wrapped her underwear tightly, was grasped by the man's slender fingers. Before Yiqing Luo could react, her clothes were forcefully pulled down by Dmo Xian. "What are you doing?" Yiqing Luo's ears were so red that water was dripping out. This man. Surely he didn't intentionally barge in at this moment? Her petite body trembled as both her hands pushed Dmo Xian's shoulders, trying to break free from the man's restraint. Dmo Xian's eyes sunk as his 5 fingers exerted a strong force, locking her arms. Suddenly, with a horizontal move, he hugged Yiqing Luo's waist in his arms. Yiqing Luo's arms subconsciously hugged Dmo Xian's neck. "You." Yiqing Luo felt her heart beating very fast, her throat was very dry and so were her lips. She pursed her lips and felt even more dry from the man's scorching breath. She instinctively licked her lips as her eyelids drooped down. Her long curly lashes fluttered unnaturally. Dmo Xian's brows creased tightly as his gloomy eyes gazed deeply at her. He was extremely displeased with her unconscious seductive actions. Didn't she know how tempting she was right now? Feeling the man's gaze, it became more and more scorching. Yiqing Luo felt more and more unnatural as she moved her body slightly. "Don't move." A low hoarse voice rang beside her ear. He lowered his head slightly as his burning hot man's body got closer to her exposed skin. When he bent down, she could clearly hear his shallow breathing. His head was even closer to her. Yiqing Luo's petite body stiffened as astonishment flashed past her eyes. Surely he wouldn't really want to take this opportunity to do something to her, right? A man's desire came just like that? At this moment, Yiqing Luo couldn't care less about her shyness as she raised her head and grabbed Dmo Xian's lapel as she said anxiously, "Ah Xian, we are not suitable." Before she could finish her words, her fingers were pushed away by the man's nimble fingers. In the next second, his body felt light, and he was submerged into the bathtub. The warm water with the fragrance of lavender made her body and mind relax. She had just closed her eyes when she suddenly thought of something. She lowered her eyes and glanced at her moonshone. Sure enough, she saw that the white doo-doo in front of her chest had been untied by the man and thrown somewhere. She didn't notice it at all. The mist spread out, but it was still unable to hide the redness on Yiqing Luo's cheeks. "Wash up." A deep voice sounded from behind her. He was still standing by the tub. Yiqing Luo shrank back into the water. Fortunately, the water was soaked with flower petals, otherwise, wouldn't this man see everything? Wait a minute, get out." She was bathing, why did he have to stand at the side and watch? Even if they had already confirmed their relationship. But it wasn't to the extent where they could be honest with each other, right? Moreover, what the hell did he mean by clean up? After washing it clean, so that he could eat it? This thought made Yiqing Luo's cheeks turn even redder. Poo. What was she thinking about? Yiqing Luo patted her own face as the warm water wetted her cheeks. Only, this pat, Yiqing Luo suddenly realized. Her originally smooth and fair hands were now covered with big and small wounds. Chapter 937. Yiqing Luo's pupils dilated at this moment. These injuries were left behind during the battle with the leopard saint technique in the Ling King's tomb. After Mu Zifei's treatment and pain relief, she didn't feel any pain at all. She had also neglected these small injuries on her body. Not only her arms, her back, her legs, her entire body. It was filled with bright red wounds that were dripping with blood. Even for herself, when she saw this scene, she couldn't help but shiver. Not to mention, Dmo Xian, who was standing by the side, looking at her body and mind. The wash clean, he mentioned, was he asking her to wash the mess on her body? She had thought that Dmo Xian was because. Yiqing Luo curled up her body in the water as the shyness on her face disappeared. Her pink lips trembled as her voice turned slightly hoarse. "Xian, go out first. This kind of body, even she herself felt nervous looking at it. Facing such a body full of scars, how could Dmo Xian possibly have any reaction? A woman would dress for the one who loved her. No matter who it was, no one was willing to let their beloved see such an unbearable side of themselves. Dmo Xian's gaze was deep as he stared at the inexplicably gloomy young lady in the water, as his brows creased tightly. Earlier she still had a bashful look, as though she flew into a rage out of embarrassment, like an enraged little wild cat. Why did she suddenly feel so dejected? Get out. Get out. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips tightly. After she finished shouting this sentence, her mouth was buried in the water. As though she wanted to submerge herself into the water, unwilling to let him see. Glancing at the splashing warm water, there were still traces of blood stains. Dmo Xian understood. That pair of peach blossom eyes were filled with a smile. He bent down and his wide purple robe was rolled up to his wrists, as both hands reached into the water. Yiqing Luo stiffened as she shrunk to one side. The splashing warm water made his robe wet. His large palm, however, forcefully held onto both her arms. Using a little strength, he lifted her chin, which was half submerged in the water. Wash, or I'll wash for you. His low and hoarse voice was filled with frivolity and ridicule. Yiqing Luo's eyes widened as her cheeks couldn't help but blush. When she raised her eyes to look at him, his expression was still as indifferent as before. It could even be said that he was a little cold. The light in Gu Pan's bright eyes dimmed slightly. He would rather mind her now that she was covered with wounds. Otherwise, why would his expression be so cold? Perhaps it was because of her injuries, or perhaps it was because the man standing beside her was the person she cared about the most. The girl in the white mist looked extremely fragile. Once upon a time, even if she had been shot, she would have been able to survive a life and death situation by herself. Even if she was deboned and tortured inhumanely, she would still be strong enough not to make a sound. However, in front of this man, her emotions could never be truly indifferent. I do mind. A clear and elegant voice floated down from above. When every single word entered Yiqing Luo's ears, her eyelashes trembled as her gaze grew dimmer. The man behind her seemed to squat down. A scorching aura enveloped her back. The man's black hair fell into the water and stuck to the girl's skin. It was itchy and somewhat unbearable. Following that, a mellow voice, like fine wine, entered her eardrums extremely clearly. I mind that you've made yourself into this state, yet you refuse to ask me for help. Yiqing Luo's petite body trembled slightly, and finally softened into Dmo Xian's arms, which were soaked in warm water. Looking at my beloved woman, covered with scars. Have you ever thought about how much pain my heart is in? Dmo Xian's accusation made Yiqing Luo's heart tremble fiercely. Chapter 938. Because I promised you that I would let you grow up on your own, until you felt that you could stand by my side. I endured all my anger, all my impulses. I watched helplessly as you were injured again and again, yet you stood up again and again. Lil Luo, how cruel you are. The last 4 words were like a sharp needle, piercing into Yiqing Luo's heart. That's right. How cruel she was. Looking at the person he loved with his own eyes, covered in wounds and drenched in blood, but because of the promise that they had made, because of her stubbornness and willfulness. She could only stand on the spot, filled with worry and heartache. I'm sorry. Yiqing Luo lowered her head, as her pink lips slowly opened and closed, spitting out 3 words. Dmo Xian's slender fingers clasped her lower jaw, blocking her apology. The warm man's breath sprayed scorchingly. I'm very angry, so angry that I don't want to talk to you. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered, as she turned her head around, anxiously wanting to apologize. Her mouth was blocked by the man fiercely. A hot and wet kiss, deeply imprinted on her lips. As though he was venting the anger in his heart, or as though he was taking revenge on her. A scorching kiss, fiercely burning her lips, her body, her heart. Dmo Xian's strength was extremely strong, so much that Yiqing Luo was unable to withstand it. Her hazy eyes were like silk, as it faintly met with the man's ink-black pupils. That pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes was filled with deep feelings. However, that expression was filled with a trace of cold and sullen expression, but he couldn't bear to vent his anger on her, so he could only use this method to punish her. Guilt pervaded her heart. Butterfly Wing's eyelashes drooped slightly, as Yiqing Luo automatically stretched out her arms, wrapping them around Dmo Xian's neck, giving herself completely to him. Pouring all her feelings into this kiss, ignited all the feelings between the two of them. The hazy fog outlined their figures, indistinctly, like a dream or a painting. This kiss lasted for a very, very long time. So long that Yiqing Luo had forgotten to breathe, as her petite body had completely collapsed into Dmo Xian's arms, heavily panting. Dmo Xian was willing to bite her lips, and this kiss had aroused his desire. The large palm which was holding onto Yiqing Luo's slender waist slowly moved upwards, directly covering the young lady's soft chest. Yiqing Luo bit her lips tightly and buried her head in Dmo Xian's chest. She was completely naked now, nestled in Dmo Xian's arms. She even took the initiative to kiss him. Oh my God! Yiqing Luo's cheeks were flushed red, so embarrassed that her entire body, which was covered with scars, started to turn pink. Especially the tips of his ears, which were so red that they looked like they could drip water. The hand in front of the moon Xiong had already started to move according to its own instincts. Yiqing Luo immediately pushed Dmo Xian's hand away. Ah Xian, enough, enough. His broad and hot palm brushed past the skin on her chest. This caused Yiqing Luo's body to tremble even more violently. And because of this push, Dmo Xian's rationality returned to his mind. His dark and gloomy eyes swept over the blushing girl in his arms. Suddenly, Dmo Xian's long arm tightened around her, hugging her tightly in his arms. Yiqing Luo wanted to struggle, but she heard the man's scorching and heavy breathing, each more hurried than the other, as though he was enduring something. She instantly understood, as her body softened and obediently leaned into his arms. They hugged for a long time, until the warm water in the bathtub had already turned cold. Dmo Xian's arms suddenly exerted strength, carrying her petite body out of the water, turning around and placing her on the bed. Yiqing Luo's heart was beating non-stop, as her face was so red that she didn't dare to look at him. Chapter 939. Wipe yourself clean and lie down properly. Dmo Xian's voice was still slightly hoarse. Yiqing Luo immediately wrapped herself tightly in the silk cloth, wrapping her body tightly without leaving a single gap. Even though she grew up in such an open world in the 21st century. But Yiqing Luo had always been clean, never for the sake of the mission or the development of the hidden Yi family, to give herself to anyone. Even the once useless and cowardly Yiqing Luo, when she was in love with Leng Fenghua, she had never given herself up in order to capture his heart. Whether it was her previous life or this life. Dmo Xian was the only man she had intimate contact with. Still not wiping? Dmo Xian frowned, squinted his peach blossom eyes and slowly leaned over, waiting for me to help you? Yiqing Luo's lips pursed tighter, blushed and shrank into the bed. I don't need your help, can you go out first? Dmo Xian didn't answer. Instead, he directly used his actions to express his answer. He walked straight to the side of the bed, bent down, and with a stretch of his long arms, wrapped himself in the silk cloth and herself into his embrace. Just when Yiqing Luo thought that he was going to do something, the man wrapped himself with the silk cloth and gently wiped the water droplets on her body. His gentle action made Yiqing Luo slightly stunned. Her watery eyes gazed at Dmo Xian's peerless face in a daze. Even when she was under Dmo Xian's control, lying on the bed, she still hadn't regained her senses. It may hurt a little, bear with it. Dmo Xian's voice became more and more hoarse. That magnetic voice was like a feather, tickling every part of her heart. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes blankly, apparently intoxicated in the handsome man trap, unable to extricate herself. Then, he felt a cool sensation on his back. Following that, her delicate body trembled, the feeling of pain, in an instant, hit her whole body. Oh! This pain made her completely regain her senses. Yiqing Luo wanted to move, but her limbs were in so much pain that she had no strength. Just a slight movement, there was a burst of tearing pain on her skin. Sealing off the pain for a long time is not suitable for healing, it will also cause great damage to the body. Dmo Xian sat by the bed, his slender fingers, holding a white jade medicine bottle. Yiqing Luo was drenched in cold sweat from the pain and caught a glimpse of the medicine bottle. This was the medicine bottle that Dmo Xian was holding in his hand when he barged into the room. He was here to apply medicine for her. His heart was moved. Dmo Xian's light snort drifted into his ears. It's better if you die from pain. If it's not painful, you don't know how to learn. Dizun, can we still have fun? The feeling of being touched disappeared in an instant. When Dmo Xian applied the medicine, he was extremely serious and cautious. His black hair cascaded down like a cloud of smoke. Every now and then, he would brush his black hair aside to prevent his hair from falling onto Yiqing Luo's body, sweeping away the medicinal dew on her body. The sparkling and translucent medicinal fluid flowed over every inch of Yiqing Luo's skin. After the ice-cold feeling, came the sharp pain of the wound tearing. This was an antiseptic and anti-inflammatory medicinal liquid. Furthermore, it could also wash away the pain-killing powder that Mu Zifei had applied on her wounds when he was treating her previously. Yiqing Luo endured the pain as she laid prone on the bed, her slender fingers clutching the sheets tightly. Her little face was slightly red, her eyes were tightly shut, her expression was slightly painful. Her pearly white teeth tightly bit her lower lip, as if she was restraining herself from moaning in pain. But in reality, only she knew. Her current situation was simply. Chapter 940. The injuries on her body were indeed painful. But Yiqing Luo was already used to it. Especially. The man sitting by the bed made her have no extra thoughts to pay attention to that little bit of pain on her body. The stunning face buried under the white pillow was extremely red. The man's slender fingers brushed the ointment over her body. The iciness of the ointment was the same temperature as the man's fingers, making her body tremble from time to time, itching to scratch. Once she thought of herself lying naked in front of Dmo Xian, allowing his fingertips to caress every inch of her skin. She felt extremely ashamed. Restraining the trembling of her petite body, restraining her voice that was about to overflow. The injury on the back has been applied. Dmo Xian's eyes flickered slightly as his throat moved. Yiqing Luo's heart trembled as she clutched the blanket tightly, covering the scenery in front of her. I'll do it myself, I'll do it myself. She sat up straight and coincidentally met eyes with Dmo Xian's bent body. From that pair of obsidian-like eyes, Yiqing Luo saw a trace of ridicule. So, Lil Luo, wants me to apply medicine all over your body. The man's low and hoarse voice was suppressed to an extremely low level. In this atmosphere, it was especially tempting. Yiqing Luo's cheeks flushed red as she shyly lowered her head and growled in a low voice, Who wants you to apply medicine on me? The man gave a low laugh. The body that was half sitting by the side of the bed was trembling slightly from laughing. The entire bed also gave off a trembling sound. Such an atmosphere, it was a romantic feeling. Coupled with the sound of the bed's trembling. It seemed more and more ambiguous. The surrounding air temperature gradually rose. Yiqing Luo lowered her head, not daring to look at Dmo Xian's expression as she bit her pink lips and said softly, Put the medicine down and leave first. I come when you ask me to, I leave when you ask me to, wouldn't that be a loss of face? Dmo Xian intentionally shifted towards the bed, his gaze deep as he gazed deeply at Yiqing Luo. The scorching heat in his eyes seemed to want to swallow Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo had just shifted towards the inside of the bed when she was scooped up by the man's long arm and she fell into the man's arms. She exclaimed and clutched the sheets tightly. She looked up and said, "Ah Xian," I said, "I'm very angry." Dmo Xian deliberately leaned close to her ear, his inky black eyes gazing at the young lady's little face in his arms without blinking. Seeing her blushing because of him, her charming eyes filled with shyness, the bottom of his heart seemed to be filled with a warm, soft and sweet feeling. The girl in his arms stiffened. The struggling stopped. She obediently snuggled into his arms. After a long while, he heard her soft voice, "So sorry. What are you sorry for?" Dmo Xian hooked up her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. When their eyes met, a trace of shyness and panic flashed across those beautiful eyes. Yiqing Luo wanted to shift her gaze away, but was forced by the man's bad taste, so she could only look him in the eye. The man faintly hooked his lips beside her ear. Her eyelashes fluttered, her charming eyes gazed at him. After a long while, she slowly said, "I shouldn't let myself take on the risk, fall into danger. I shouldn't let you watch me get hurt, and even stop you from helping me. I shouldn't." She was obedient. Unrestrained and unrestrained, she listed out several mistakes. So obedient that no one could bear to reprimand her. Dmo Xian's inky eyes reflected her face. Chapter 941. His arms were wrapped tightly around her waist. As though he wanted to integrate her into his body, to become one. "I'm sorry." Yiqing Luo had no words to refute and could only apologize. Yes, he was her man. If she didn't rely on her own man, was she going to let others rely on her? This thought made Yiqing Luo's face sunk. Even if it was just a casual thought. She would absolutely not allow Dmo Xian to belong to someone else. Her arms suddenly wrapped around Dmo Xian's neck as her elegant brows flowed with warmth. She straightened her body and kissed him on the lips. The young lady took the initiative to kiss him, making Dmo Xian slightly stunned. A smile flashed past his eyes as he immediately hugged her waist tightly, turning from guest to host. This kiss, kissed until Yiqing Luo was out of breath, before Dmo Xian released her. The young lady's soft body, laid in the man's arms. Pink lips in the red moon, hazy and charming eyes, and that light, heart-stirring panting and instinctive moaning. All were subconsciously provoking the man to become a beast. Dmo Xian's hand, which was hugging her waist, increased the strength. Yiqing Luo had difficulty in breathing, and her abdomen was pushed slightly by the strangling. "Lil Luo, Dmo Xian's hoarse voice was filled with a strong desire. Yiqing Luo didn't hear it. She, who was in a daze from the kiss, raised her eyes and blinked at him. Her lower jaw was locked heavily by Dmo Xian. The man's ink-black eyes seemed as though he could see through her soul, as he gazed deeply into her eyes. In his eyes, there was a spark of excitement. "You're seducing me." This was a statement, not a question. Yiqing Luo's heart skipped a few beats. I didn't." Dmo Xian stared at her swollen red lips, stained by his sparkling luster, as if seeking his kiss. "Didn't?" Dmo Xian's fingers swept past her lips. "You're only wrapped in a blanket and you took the initiative to kiss me. Isn't this seducing me?" Yiqing Luo's face instantly flushed red. Her little face immediately turned away, not daring to look at him. In the earlier situation, her mind was filled with Dmo Xian's anger and guilt, thinking of how to apologize to Dmo Xian, to dispel his anger. Deep in love, he naturally kissed her. How could he have known that he was currently naked, looking at the young girl who was so shy that she couldn't even say a word? That shyness really aroused a man's desire. Furthermore, it was the woman he loved. If it was during normal times, Dmo Xian would definitely not be willing to restrain himself. After all, he and Yiqing Luo were in love with each other and he had only set his eyes on Yiqing Luo alone. In future, whoever would get married, have children and grow old together. This kind of thing would happen sooner or later. But now, Yiqing Luo had just experienced a life and death battle and was covered with injuries. He wasn't so beastly as to not care about his beloved woman's body to settle his Beast Valley debt. He tightened the blanket on Yiqing Luo and straightened his back towards him. Apply the medicine. After saying that, he left without looking back. If one looked closely, one could see that the warm water had soaked his body, and his muscles were tightly clenched. That footstep seemed extremely flustered. The man got up and Yiqing Luo felt a gust of cold wind. She wrapped the blanket tightly and saw Dmo Xian getting off the bed. Just as she was about to call out to him, she saw him leaving her room directly. Her heart trembled fiercely. Staring at the door, she was in a daze. Was he angry? Because she was too proactive? Chapter 942. Lass, you're really too slow. Suddenly, Old Man Song's voice sounded in her mind. He looked like he couldn't bear it anymore. Usually you look so smart. Why are you so slow when it comes to the matters between men and women? Yiqing Luo was stunned and only recovered after a long while. Her cheeks flushed red as she gritted her teeth and said angrily, just now, you saw it all. She and Dmo Xian almost had sex. She took the initiative to give a kiss, all given by Old Man Song. I still know how to write the words don't look at indecent things. Old Man Song snorted and explained, I don't have that kind of perverted hobby. Old Man Song rolled his eyes in the azure dew bracelet. He didn't have the leisure to stare at Yiqing Luo 24 hours a day. If it wasn't for the sudden feeling of the lass's inexplicable disappointment, he wouldn't have opened his eyes to figure out what had happened. Yiqing Luo's mood gradually calmed down and lowered her eyes, unable to hide her disappointment. Oh, Old Man Song couldn't bear to see her like this. In his memory, Yiqing Luo had always been confident and flamboyant. Unlike now, dejected as if she had lost everything in the world. She really had deep feelings for that kid Dmo Xian. Lass, don't let your imagination run wild. That kid loves you so much, that's why he left now. When Old Man Song opened his eyes, he happened to see Dmo Xian leaving and Yiqing Luo staring at his departing back in a daze. Old Man Song had lived for thousands of years. Seeing this scene, coupled with the fact that Yiqing Luo was only wrapped in a sheet, he could roughly guess the reason for her low mood. Loves me so much? Yiqing Luo murmured. If he loved her so much, why did he leave without looking back? Old Man Song clicked his tongue and said earnestly, any man who sees his beloved woman in a disheveled state will not be able to keep calm, especially after being so intimate with you. If he stayed any longer, it's inevitable that something uncontrollable will happen. Old Man Song was an elder, but when he mentioned this topic, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but blush. You're badly injured now. He left in such a hurry because he cared about you and didn't want to lose control and do something to hurt you. As for why he left, I'm sure you understand. Throwing down these words, Old Man Song faintly sighed. Yiqing Luo's cheeks turned even redder. He was in such a hurry to leave because he cared about her. Because he did not want to hurt her body by doing that kind of thing when she was injured. He left, it was not that he was disgusted with her. But he cared about her. The corners of her mouth unconsciously curled up into a smile. Her eyes were filled with happiness and sweetness. The old man in the azure dew bracelet clicked his tongue. Love, it was so powerful. Even Yiqing Luo, who had never lowered her head and was so strong as though she was made of iron, would also sink into love and become a little woman. It's good to be young. Old Man Song turned off his sight and hearing once more. He continued to dive into the azure dew bracelet and study the Purgatory Pagoda. In another courtyard of the Under Heaven mansion. It was quiet, completely different from the liveliness of the outer court. An ordinary-looking young man dressed in a black robe carried a bowl of steaming hot medicinal soup as he slowly walked into a room. The room's furnishings were monotonous and the colors were dark. It looked extremely oppressive and cold, without a hint of human presence. The young man's line of sight fell onto the bed. This bed was also monotonous and cold. There were no gauze curtains or patterns. Chapter 943. He could not imagine that this was a girl's room. Lying on the bed was a delicate and pretty young girl. Her face was pale and her eyes were tightly shut. Her brows were slightly furrowed as if she was in pain in her sleep. Her pale lips were trembling slightly. The young man frowned and walked over quickly. After putting the medicine aside, he walked to the bed and was about to bend over. The girl on the bed suddenly struggled in pain. She stretched out her hands and grabbed at something. The young man's brows furrowed even more and his eyes darkened. Staring at the slender and fair little hand, he finally shook his own hand. The girl seemed to feel at ease when she felt the warmth. She clenched his broad palm tightly. Her soft skin caressed his palm. It carried the unique fragrance of a girl and entered his nose. The young man was stunned for a while. He bent over and sat by the bed. He was about to wake the girl up. Perhaps the girl sensed that someone was approaching. She held the young man's hand and slowly moved closer to him. In the end, she found a comfortable position in his arms and fell asleep peacefully. Her tightly knitted eyebrows also relaxed. The young man's body stiffened and he only came back to his senses after a long while. He looked at the girl in his arms in a daze. His expression was a little embarrassed and helpless. He wanted to push her away but his hand paused in mid-air when he saw her sleeping peacefully. After being stunned for a long time, the young man retracted his hand and slowly placed it on her waist. He lowered his eyes and looked at the girl's delicate and pretty face. Even he did not realize that the expression on his face had become increasingly gentle. When she was sleeping, it was completely different from when she was sharp-tongued and hot-tempered. It was extremely quiet. So quiet that it made one's heart ache. Her body, how could it be so soft? It was like a ball of cotton, nestling softly in his arms. The smile in his eyes became increasingly gentle. However, beautiful moments could never last for too long. At this moment, hurried footsteps could be heard from outside. Then, a gentle and concerned voice of a girl could be heard. "Xiao Jin, how is Miss Yen?" The door was opened, and a woman in a peach-colored short skirt and simple attire ran in. The worry on his face froze when he saw the scene in the room. On the bed, the young man and young woman embracing each other were precisely Xiao Jin and Yen Xiaoyi. Xiao Jin's hand, which was holding Yen Xiaoyi's delicate body, instantly froze. He stared awkwardly at the person in his arms, then looked at the woman opposite him. "Taozi, shoo, don't wake her up." Peach was also embarrassed. She covered her eyes, bowed, and stepped back. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Please continue, don't misunderstand, I'm not, Peach was in such a hurry to leave that she didn't pay attention to the threshold of the door. She fell backward and sat on the ground. She covered her mouth in pain and endured the sharp pain coming from her buttocks. Peach. Xiao Jin subconsciously wanted to get up to get the peach, but just as he moved, he remembered that he was still carrying Yen Xiaoyi in his arms. He could only squat down and pull Yen Xiaoyi's hands away. He was about to carefully place her back onto the bed. The girl's clear eyes slowly opened. There was no sleepiness in his eyes. It clearly reflected Xiao Jin's face. Chapter 944. Yen Xiaoyi's face was pale and her expression couldn't be seen. However, when a pair of clear and beautiful eyes quietly stared at Xiao Jin felt an indescribable sense of guilt. After a while, Yen Xiaoyi furrowed her brows and glanced at Peach, who was still sitting on the ground and enduring the pain without making a sound. Her dry lips moved slowly. "Don't worry about me, go help Miss Tao." Xiao Jin saw that she didn't question why he was carrying her and instantly heaved a sigh of relief. He hurriedly stood up and rushed to Peach, reaching out to help her up. Peach looked at the expressionless Yen Xiaoyi and then at Xiao Jin, who was standing stiffly beside her to ease the awkwardness. She felt helpless. These two slow-witted and slender people. If she didn't give him a push, when would she be able to understand his thoughts? "Xiao Jin, don't worry about me, I'm fine. Go take care of Miss Yen." Peach smiled and brushed Xiao Jin's hand away. Xiao Jin had always been thick-skinned, but now it was so thin that it would break with a poke. He glanced at Yan Xiaoyi from the corner of his eye and saw that her clear and beautiful eyes were still staring straight at him. This was the rhythm of a punitive expedition against him. Immediately, he laughed dryly. Since she's awake, there's no need to take care of her. Your fall is worse, can you still walk? I'll help you to the front hall and let Lulu take a look. With that, he reached out to hold Peach's arm and led her to the door. Peach was about to kneel down in front of Xiao Jin. Just how slow was this man? Even though, she was very clear that Xiao Jin had chosen to help her away because he had been caught red-handed by Yan Xiaoyi, and had taken advantage of Yan Xiaoyi. That was because she was shy. But, if he helped her leave, in other people's eyes, they would think that he cared more about her. Like Yan Xiaoyi. Peach was about to hold her forehead and sigh. Yes, Miss Tao's injury is worse. A cold voice came from the bed. Yan Xiaoyi scoffed softly as her pale lips curled into a smile that was not a smile. Anyway, I don't have any special relationship with him. Miss Tao, don't misunderstand, lest Xiao Jin finds it hard to explain to you. That seemingly elegant but extremely cold smile caused Peach to shiver uncontrollably. It was over, Yan Xiaoyi had indeed misunderstood. She coughed lightly and hurriedly explained, he doesn't need to explain anything to me, and I didn't misunderstand that. You guys talk, I'll go to the front hall to find Lulu. With that, Peach quickly turned around and wanted to escape from Yan Xiaoyi's room. The moment he moved, he felt a tearing pain coming from his buttocks. She took a deep breath and did not have the courage to take another step. Just as she was in a terrible fix, Peach felt her body lighten and was carried horizontally in Xiao Jin's arms. Her delicate body stiffened, and she instinctively wrapped her arms around Xiao Jin's neck. When she wrapped her arms around Xiao Jin's neck, Peach's expression changed slightly. She thought to herself, it's over. She looked over Xiao Jin's shoulder at Yan Xiaoyi on the bed. The young girl's pale face was indifferent, without any ripples. However, there seemed to be some light in her beautiful eyes that was gradually dimming. Peach's heart trembled. She opened her mouth, wanting to explain something for Xiao Jin. But Xiao Jin had already carried her out of the room and walked towards the front hall. The words she wanted to say stopped at the tip of her tongue. She retracted her gaze and raised her eyes slightly, staring at the young man who was carrying her. A strong masculine aura enveloped her body. Peach blushed and lowered her eyes shyly, not daring to look at him again. This man was really silly. But he was silly and adorable. It was no wonder that even though Xiao Jin's looks were not outstanding. Chapter 945. Yan Xiaoyi leaned against the side of the bed, her eyes staring at the open door in a daze. Xiao Jin and Tao Tao's figures had long disappeared before her eyes. But she still couldn't retract her gaze. Was he so afraid that Tao Tao would misunderstand their relationship? Was he so reluctant to let Tao Tao get hurt? Was he so distressed for Tao Tao? Yan Xiaoyi sneered, her face becoming increasingly pale. She was lying on the bed, the poison in her body had not been detoxified. Perhaps, if she couldn't find the antidote, she would die. But, in Xiao Jin's eyes, it was just Tao Tao who had hurt her buttocks, who was more seriously injured than her. It was enough to prove Tao Tao's position in Xiao Jin's heart. She was thinking too highly of herself. Yan Xiaoyi closed her lifeless beautiful eyes. Suddenly, her head sank, and a feeling of dizziness came over her. Her consciousness gradually blurred, and finally fell on the bed, unconscious. Front hall. Groups of mercenaries were queuing up to treat the doctor. When Xiao Jin carried the Peach and walked out, the bustling and clamorous front hall instantly fell into a deathly silence. The silence lasted for half an incense stick of time. Xiao Jin was dumbfounded, being stared at by dozens of eyes. He couldn't react for a moment. Tao blushed, and awkwardly patted his shoulder, Xiao Jin, put me down first. Xiao Jin suddenly regained his senses, and hurriedly put Tao down. I've offended you, I'm sorry. I just saw that you seemed to be in a lot of pain, so I didn't think too much. He actually carried a woman? And without saying anything, he decisively and forcefully held her in his arms. No, it's okay. Tao's blushing little face couldn't reduce the heat on her face. She unnaturally shifted her gaze, holding her buttocks, and limped towards Baiming Lulu. Lulu, Before she could finish, Baiming Lulu cried out in surprise. You guys actually developed this relationship? Tao's face instantly turned even redder. No, Jean, let me tell you. Young people need to control themselves, a young lady's body is very delicate. You bullied her so badly that she can't even stand properly, you say. Baiming Lulu clicked her tongue, expressing a look of disgust towards Xiao Jin. The dozens of people in the front hall burst into laughter when they heard this. Lulu. Peach raised her voice and grabbed Baiming Lulu's arm. What nonsense are you talking about? How could a 16-year-old girl say something like that? Between her and Xiao Jin, they were just ordinary friends. Baiming Lulu glanced at Taozi's buttocks and patted her shoulder earnestly. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be shy. I'm a doctor. In front of a doctor, any privacy is not privacy. If you talk nonsense again, I will ignore you. If there are any rare herbs in the future, I won't ask 3,000 peach blossoms to ask around for you. Peach flew into a rage out of shame. Baiming Lulu had always been a blabbermouth when it came to matters related to treatment. She wasn't joking when she said that. Instead, he seriously considered it from the perspective of a doctor. But there were still so many people around, and they were pushing her and Xiao Jin into a pair. Not to mention that her reputation was tarnished. If this were to spread to Yan Xiaoyi, even 10 mouths wouldn't be able to clear her name. At this moment, they heard a sweet voice leisurely. What do you mean by paying attention to moderation? Who bullied the other until they couldn't stand? Chapter 946. Everyone's vision turned towards the person who spoke. They saw Yi Qing Luo, who was dressed in a long red dress, walking over with light steps. Perhaps it was because they had rarely seen her wearing such a gorgeous and flirtatious color. The mercenaries' gazes were filled with astonishment. The fiery red dress fluttered in the wind, swaying like a blooming rose. When she took a step, it seemed like a billowing fire wave swayed. It was extremely flirtatious and breathtaking. What's the matter? Yi Qing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as her vision shot towards Baiming Lulu. What interesting topic were you talking about earlier? Why did you become quiet the moment I arrived? Baiming Lulu blinked her eyes as she enviously gazed at Yi Qing Luo's red dress, as though she was infatuated, replying in a daze, I was advising Jin Zi to control himself, not to be too rough with young ladies. Lulu. Peach grabbed Baiming Lulu's arm tightly as her cheeks flushed red. I accidentally tripped, it's not what you think. Baiming Lulu looked suspiciously at Peach's buttocks. Tripped? Seeing Baiming Lulu's suspicious look, Xiao Jin couldn't take it anymore. Don't talk rubbish, Peach and I are just ordinary friends, don't ruin her reputation. Seeing Xiao Jin getting angry, Baiming Lulu's expression suddenly turned serious as she hooked Peach's arm, placing it on her shoulder. All right, I'll leave now. Her words had just ended when Baiming Lulu and Peach's silhouettes were nowhere to be seen. The entire hall of mercenaries burst out laughing. Yi Qing Luo looked at Xiao Jin as her brows creased slightly. How's Xiao Yi? Baiming Lulu's thoughts had always been on medical skills and alchemy. Towards matters of the heart, she was even slower than Xiao Jin. Generally speaking, she would absolutely not misunderstand that Xiao Jin and Peach had an ambiguous relationship. Unless... what had they done to cause others to misunderstand? If Xiao Jin and Peach really had some relationship, then what about Xiao Yi? Mentioning Yan Xiao Yi, Xiao Jin's mind suddenly recalled the scene earlier when he pulled Yan Xiao Yi into his arms. The young lady's fresh body fragrance was still lingering in his nose. His fingers seemed to still retain the softness of the young lady's body. His face instantly flushed slightly as he lowered his head and didn't reply. What kind of expression was that? Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as she sized up Xiao Jin's expression deeply. However, he was unable to guess what he was trying to express. I'll go take a look at Xiao Yi. Yiqing Luo was too lazy to continue guessing. The current situation was not the time to think about love. Xiao Jin and Yan Xiaoyi's relationship could only depend on themselves. If Xiao Jin really chose the peach in the end, he could only smile and wish him well. She walked a few steps towards Yan Xiaoyi's courtyard, then thought of something and stopped in her tracks. I told you to find Master Ghost Doctor to save Xiao Yi. Have you found him? Xiao Jin's expression instantly returned to normal. Her cheeks, which were slightly flushed, had already returned to normal. His expression also became serious. By the way, I have something to discuss with you. As he spoke, he took out a brocade pouch from his bosom. It was the brocade bag which Yiqing Luo had given to Xiao Jin, asking him to look for Ghost Doctor. In other words, Xiao Jin had not seen the Ghost Doctor. Seeing Xiao Jin's solemn expression, Yiqing Luo recalled her battle with the leopard saint technique in King Ling's tomb as she muttered to herself for a moment, I happen to have something to discuss with everyone. 1 hour later, we'll meet at the meeting hall. The mercenaries in the front hall could hear the seriousness in their words. The playful smiles on their faces instantly faded as all of them looked towards Yiqing Luo, responding in unison, yes. Chapter 947. Yiqing Luo went to Yan Xiaoyi's courtyard. As soon as he stepped into her room, he saw the pale-faced young lady leaning against the headboard with her eyes closed and her breathing shallow. Obviously, he had already fainted. Yiqing Luo walked over quickly and caught a glimpse of the bowl of cold medicinal soup on the table. Her eyebrows unconsciously furrowed. Xiao Yi, what happened to Xiao Yi? Xiao Jin, who was following closely behind, saw the unconscious Yan Xiao Yi, and his body instantly stiffened. Yiqing Luo used one arm to support Yan Xiao Yi as her fingers placed on her pulse. After searching for a while, she frowned and glanced at the young man standing at the door in a daze. Then, she turned back. She took out a pill bottle from the profound phoenix ring and fed it to Yan Xiao Yi. Then, he helped Yan Xiao Yi lie down carefully and tucked her into the blanket. She did that? Xiao Jin only came back to his senses after a long while. Looking at Yan Xiaoyi's pale complexion, there was an indescribable dull pain in his heart. Yiqing Luo glanced at the medicinal soup by the side. Who prescribed this medicinal soup? Holy pirate. Xiao Jin walked over and picked up the bowl of medicine. Is there a problem with this medicine? I've already fed it to Xiao Yi twice. Could it be? There's no problem with this medicine. Yiqing Luo interrupted his wild imagination. Holy pirate? This old man had learned all his skills. His stealing skills could be said to be the best in the world. He even knows medicine. The herbs in this bowl of soup were all herbs that could suppress the purple poppy grass. To Yan Xiao Yi, there were only advantages and no disadvantages. Why haven't you taken this bowl of medicine yet? It was still placed at the side. It was already cold. Xiao Jin's expression changed slightly as he coughed lightly. Yiqing Luo thought of the matter regarding the peach earlier and didn't continue to probe further. The reason why Yan Xiao Yi fainted was because her emotions were unstable, which caused the poison in her body to spread. This emotional instability. It must have something to do with Xiao Jin and peaches. She could more or less see Yan Xiao Yi's feelings for Xiao Jin. However, Yiqing Luo sighed as she stood up and left the bedside, turning her head to look at the uneasy Xiao Jin who was standing behind her. The poison in Xiao Yi's body has already started to spread and we must find my master to formulate the antidote as soon as possible. The antidote to purple poppy grass, purple millet grass, the ghost doctor would definitely have it. However, Shangguan Liuli had said before that the poison in Yan Xiaoyi's body was mixed with a poison powder specially made by the dark forces. Just the purple millet grass alone could not completely cure the poison. He did not know whether Shangguan Liuli's words were true or false. But, regardless of whether it was true or not, she had to believe it. She had no choice. Xiao Jin panicked. The academy will be completely locked down during the holidays. Even teachers and elders cannot stay in the academy. I snuck into the academy, but I didn't find any traces of the ghost doctor. Even if no one could stay in the academy. A ghost doctor who found it troublesome, a ghost doctor who had her own medicine refining room, shouldn't leave the academy. I also discovered something very strange in the academy. At the mention of the academy, Xiao Jin's expression became grave. He paused again. Let's talk about it together in the meeting hall. Yiqing Luo nodded. Let's go, let's head to the meeting hall first and wait for everyone to gather. In the meeting hall, there were already more than 20 mercenaries who had received the notice. Hearing the hubbub in the meeting hall, they were all discussing about the dark forces matters, as though they were having a great time. Yiqing Luo was just about to take a step in when she bumped into a warm and broad embrace. She painfully raised her head and met with a pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes. He had changed into a purple robe and his misty black hair was scattered over his shoulders. Chapter 948. He, also went to take a bath. In her mind, she suddenly recalled what old man Sung said. A man, in the naked embrace of the woman he loved, took the initiative to kiss him. He couldn't bear to hurt her, so he hurriedly left to do something. Indeed, what old man Sung said was right. He didn't want to hurt her. Yiqing Luo instantly felt a feeling of being cherished. Her eyes were filled with smiles as she stretched out her hand and hugged Dmo Xian's sturdy waist. Xian, we are preparing for the meeting. Dmo Xian squinted his eyes as he held her hand and sized her up carefully. After confirming that her wounds had been smeared with medicine, he put down her hand and hugged her waist tightly as he walked directly into the meeting hall. Didn't you just leave the meeting hall? And his actions were so hurried, otherwise he wouldn't have coincidentally bumped into her earlier. To pick you up. A simple and crude reply made Yiqing Luo's cheeks burn slightly. Seeing those brothers in the meeting hall looking at her with ridicule. Yiqing Luo's cheeks were boiling hot as she complained to Dmo Xian, my prestige as vice group leader has been swept away by you. Cough cough. Tong Ziqing choked on her saliva when she heard that. Qing Luo, don't say it as if you have prestige. Ni Ruopan nodded in agreement. Madam Qing Luo, I've never felt that you have prestige. This group of little fellows who were tearing me down, could they still play happily? The atmosphere in the meeting hall gradually relaxed. After a while, all the mercenaries who were still able to stand up had gathered in the meeting hall. Yiqing Luo took a look. There were about 5 mercenaries who were bedridden due to their heavy injuries and had not come over. She heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily all her brothers had survived this battle. Her gaze swept past those brothers who were standing upright, as her gaze fixed on Baiming Liansheng. Did you bring the corpse king back? Baiming Liansheng nodded respectfully. I brought my brothers and found the corpse king in the ruins of the tomb. Losing the tomb's yin qi nourishment, the corpse king no longer has any battle power. I have already handed the corpse king and its coffin over to the Mercenary Association, receiving 600 mercenary group credit points and a sword manual. 600 points? As expected of the random mission of the random missions. As expected of a complicated training mission. The rewards were so generous that it was equivalent to what all of them would get if they took on and completed quests for an entire month. Random quests doubled the honor points. In other words, 300 points had turned into 600 points. Currently, the World Mercenary Group's honor points was 191 points. After deducting the 100 honor points for giving up on the first low-level training mission. In addition to these 600 points, he would have 691 honor points. Promotion to a Silver Mercenary Group required 5,000 honor points. It seemed like there was still a long way to go. What's that sword manual? Yiqing Luo didn't take a good look at the mission's reward at that time. A complex experience mission, only honor points and a sword manual? When Bai Ming Lianqing took out that sword manual, Yi Qing Luo instantly understood. If this sword manual was leaked out, it would definitely cause countless swordsmen in the Nirvana realm to fight over it. This was the pinnacle of swordsmanship, the 15 styles of flowing clouds and gales. Yi Qing Luo had also heard of this swordplay. It was rumored that the execution of this sword technique was as smooth as flowing water, like a gale. Chapter 949. Take a look at this sword manual. Which brother in the mercenary group is a swordsman? Take it to practice. Yi Qing Luo placed the sword manual back into Bai Ming Lianqing's hands and immediately coughed lightly, back to the main topic. She clapped her hands, indicating for everyone to shift their gazes from the sword manual to her. Zi Qing, did those people from the dark forces who were locked up in the underground room say anything? The minute they returned to the old residence, Yi Qing Luo got someone to lock up the 4 people from the dark forces who were still alive in the underground room. This underground room was dug out by God Thief in this 1 month's time. His original intention was to hide the things that he had stolen in the underground room. But now it had become the underground room to lock up the dark forces. Tong Zi Qing shook her head. Their mouths are sealed tight and they've already been tortured, but they refuse to say a single word. No matter, we still have a lot of time. Yi Qing Luo didn't expect Leopard Saint Fa to obediently spill out everything about the dark forces. Smart people understood. This was their only bargaining chip to survive. They who were crippled couldn't escape even if they wanted to. They could only try their best to survive and wait for the Lord to save them. Yi Qing Luo had long seen through Leopard Saint Fa and the others' thoughts. Save. The dark forces were all selfish people. Rather than saving, it was more practical to silence them. Although they were going to report to the academy tomorrow. But with God Thief watching over the underground room, Yi Qing Luo wasn't afraid that Leopard Saint Fa and the others would escape. If that lord really came, they would be able to catch a turtle in a jar. Yi Qing Luo's eyes narrowed as she said calmly, when I was retrieving the god relic in King Ling's tomb, I met 3 people from the dark forces. They should be considered as people with some status in the dark forces. From that guardian snake's mouth, the current thing we know is that the dark forces are preparing to invade Nirvana realm. Currently 1/3 of the dark forces are hiding in the dark corners of Nirvana realm, preparing to take in even more cultivators to be used by the dark forces. The minute she said that, the meeting hall fell into a dead silence. 1/3 of the dark forces were already in Nirvana realm. However, in the entire Nirvana realm, other than them, no one else had noticed this. In other words, even if they had noticed it, they had made deals with the dark forces and concealed their existence. So, the reason why the profound practitioners from those powers were released from the Ling King's tomb, other than allowing them to help the Under Heaven mercenary group build momentum, the most important reason was to allow them to spread the news of the dark forces in the Nirvana realm. I'm sure that it won't be long before the profound practitioners of the various forces will be wary of the existence of the dark forces. The dark forces' plans will definitely be disrupted. The mercenaries looked solemn. The news of the dark organization spread out. This time, the Tomb King's tomb mission was no longer just a simple mission. From the start of this mission, the World Mercenary Group was destined to become the focus of attention. The dark forces would definitely treat the World Mercenary Group as their first target. You all have to be careful, in the academy. Yi Qing Luo thought of Heavenly Academy's director and her eyes sunk. Try to avoid letting other students see your faces. In the academy, they have their own forces. Speaking of the academy, Xiao Jin immediately nodded. Yes, there are dark forces in the academy as well. When you went to the academy, what did you see? Yi Qing Luo asked. Chapter 950. According to the Academy's rules, no one is allowed to approach the Academy during the holidays. Xiao Jin frowned, his expression solemn as he said, after I snuck into the Academy, there were people in the Academy. Everyone's expressions didn't change. They could roughly guess who those people were. That's right. It's the people from the dark forces. Xiao Jin solemnly nodded his head. In a concise and comprehensive manner, he talked about what happened after he snuck into the academy. Whenever the academy was on holiday, the headmaster would chase all the guards out of the academy and have them stand guard outside the academy, not even letting a fly escape. Xiao Jin expended a great deal of effort before sneaking into the academy. The academy was silent, like a black curtain that shrouded every corner of the academy. The familiar place was now filled with a strange and cold feeling. Although Xiao Jin felt that it was strange, he was concerned about the poison in Yan Xiaoyi's body, so he directly snuck into the library. The second floor of the library could only be opened by the librarian. Just as Xiao Jin was thinking of a way to open the door to the second floor, he suddenly heard some movement coming from the library. It seemed like someone was talking and walking over. He could vaguely tell that it was the principal's voice. Xiao Jin was anxious. If the principal were to find out that a student had entered the academy during the holidays, it would be a violation of the academy's rules, and the student would be forcibly expelled from the academy. Who knows, the dean might even discover the secret of the devil class. Just at this moment, the brocade pouch that Yi Qing Luo handed to him fell out. The door to the second floor of the library opened. He fell into the second floor of the library, and the door quietly closed. At the same time, it also blocked the sound coming from the first floor of the library. Xiao Jin stood up fearfully and quickly ran in the direction of the medicine refining room. However, there was not a single soul in the medicine refining room. The entire pill refinery was in a mess. It did not look like a place where people lived at all. On the wooden table filled with medicinal herbs, there was also a half-eaten meal. Xiao Jin picked up the food and sniffed it. It was already rancid. It had been here for at least 2 days. In other words, the ghost doctor would no longer be in the medicine refining room since the academy's holidays began. If they couldn't find the ghost doctor, what should they do with the poison in Xiaoyi's body? Xiao Jin was burning with anxiety. He put down the spoiled food and was just about to open the door of the refining room to leave. However, he heard the terrified screams of a young boy coming from outside. You lied to me," the youth roared. Faintly, a low sneer could be heard. That youth seemed to want to escape. His hurried footsteps rang out as he ran in the direction of the refining room. Xiao Jin's heart tightened as he scanned the surroundings, wanting to see where he could hide. The young man suddenly staggered and fell to the ground. The young man shouted in fear, "Dean, please let me go. My mother is still waiting for me at home. I don't want to enter the class of gods anymore. Please let me go home." Xiao Jin's body suddenly stiffened. Dean? Class of gods? This young lad was a student of the Heavenly Academy. What had the dean done to the academy's students? Just as he was thinking about it, he heard the youth let out a blood-curdling scream, and then there was no more sound. That student was dead? Xiao Jin felt a chill run down his spine. The dean killed a student of the academy? What was going on? Without waiting for Xiao Jin to digest this news, he heard the dean's voice again. "Lord Protector, the soul of this mystic profound 8th grade student has been extracted." After a moment of silence, Xiao Jin did not hear the voice of that so-called Lord Protector. The dean's obviously flattering voice rang out again, "Lord Protector, please rest assured. This time, I have prepared the souls of 4 students for the Lord." The souls of 4 students? Chapter 951. Her thoughts returned back to the meeting hall. Xiao Jin looked at Yi Qing Luo with a grave expression. Director's action is simply too strange. Moreover, from the meaning of his words, it's not the first time director had done this. Mystic profound 8th grade students. In the Heavenly Academy, this was considered to be above average. At least high profound class students. Director was actually willing to do it. And the other 4 students, who were they? When Yi Qing Luo heard that, her slender brows creased slightly. Director is indeed doing some kind of deal with the dark forces. More accurately, director seems to be fawning on the Lord of the Dark Forces. The last time at the library pavilion's 2nd story, She had already sensed Director's ambition. Dark forces. Which means to say, those students' souls are wanted by the dark forces? Xiao Jin asked anxiously. Although their devil class was isolated from the world and had never interacted with other students. But after all, they were in the same academy and had stayed together for several years. If they really saw these innocent students' souls being taken away, they wouldn't even have the chance to reincarnate. They would still feel that it was too cruel. Dark forces kept on searching for cultivators, using profound Yin Qi to sign the soul contract with them, so they need the cultivator's soul. Yiqing Luo wasn't surprised about the students' souls being taken away. From the moment she found out about the soul contract, Yiqing Luo already had a guess. The Lord of the Dark Forces should need the cultivator's soul to achieve a certain goal. Which was what Director and Guardian Eagle mentioned earlier. The Lord's big plan. Furthermore, the key point of that big plan should be related to her. Otherwise, the dark forces wouldn't keep sending people with profound Yin Qi to her side. The dark forces' target, other than her profound jade heart, was also her body. So, the dark forces placed their target on Heavenly Academy? Not only Xiao Jin was infuriated, the other brothers couldn't conceal the anger on their faces. Director actually made a deal with the dark forces, and even sent his own students to the dark forces. They had painstakingly tried to enter Heavenly Academy, and persisted, just for this. This cruel and cold director? No wonder, these students with poor aptitudes were all allocated to devil class, and no one bothered about them. It was because the director totally didn't fancy them. Because their souls were unable to be offered to the dark forces lord. I heard other students mention it when I was in the female dormitory. Every holiday in the academy, a few talented students would mysteriously disappear. I think, their souls have been extracted and offered to the dark forces. Yiqing Luo recalled the female student's conversation the last time she was in the dormitory. He mentioned the disappearance of Su Rong from the high profound class. He also mentioned that in the past few years, there would be students going missing during holidays. It would appear that this matter was not a rumor, but a fact. The meeting hall fell into silence once again. The mercenaries looked at each other, unable to understand the dean's actions. He had offered his student to the dark forces. Just how thick-skinned was he to be able to act as though nothing had happened and listen to the students calling him a principal? Soul, suddenly, the man who had been hugging Yiqing Luo's slender waist muttered softly. That wet black hair scattered onto Yiqing Luo's shoulder. Yiqing Luo looked up. Ah Xian, have you thought of something? There were many things that these youths who had never been involved in the world might not understand. Chapter 952. I need a profound practitioner's soul. Dmo Xian rested his chin on his hand as he lazily leaned back on the soft chair. I have heard of the legend of needing a cultivator's soul. Everyone immediately congealed their senses and looked curiously at Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian deliberately whetted his appetite. Only when everyone's curiosity was piqued did he slowly say, I heard that there is a forbidden art that can remove all seals in the world by using the souls of 9,999 young profound practitioners. Seal? Yiqing Luo frowned. Could it be that the people from the dark forces were constantly searching for the souls of profound practitioners in order to undo the seal? Also, Dmo Xian suddenly paused and curled up a lock of hair on Yiqing Luo's shoulder as his voice gradually deepened. I've heard from the imperial palace that there was a great war 1,000 years ago. The emperor of the gods from the upper realm expelled the dark forces from the nirvana realm and sealed the king of darkness in the darkness forever. Yiqing Luo's body suddenly stiffened. She stared into Dmo Xian's eyes and asked in a daze, King of Darkness? Is the Lord of the Dark Forces? Dmo Xian raised his brows and nodded slightly. If I didn't guess wrongly, this so-called Lord should be the King of Darkness. If the leader of the Dark Forces was the King of Darkness, he connected it to the Great War 1,000 years ago. That would explain everything. 9,999 profound practitioner souls, all for the sake of unsealing the King of Darkness. 1,000 years ago, only the divine emperors of the upper realm could expel them. It could be seen how powerful the dark forces were. We absolutely cannot let the King of Darkness seal be lifted. Yiqing Luo's brows were tightly knitted together. If the King of Darkness seal was removed, the dark forces would once again wreak havoc in the Nirvana world. The people from the upper realm could come down to the ordinary world to save them once. But that didn't mean he could save them a second time or a third time. Then, what should we do? The mercenaries looked at each other, not confident in themselves. After fighting with the people from the dark forces in the tomb of the Ling King, they could deeply feel the gap between them and the people from the dark forces. If not for Chi-Chi and the Blue Dragon's appearance, he was afraid that they would not be able to stand here alive. Stopping the King of Darkness from breaking the seal was easier said than done. The first step we need to take is to eliminate the King of Darkness and gather new profound practitioner souls. He had no idea how long the Dean had been working with the people from the dark forces. There was no way of knowing how many souls had gathered. Duju. It was easier said than done. The academy was the Dean's power. But they were students of the devil class and were unable to get close to the other students to investigate the situation. Furthermore, the World Mercenary Group's reputation had already spread far and wide. If they were recognized in the academy, they would definitely be killed. The secret of the devil class would also be exposed. Yiqing Luo muttered to herself for a moment and said calmly, "Get a copy of the background information of all the students in Heavenly Academy from Tao Zi and send it to me." Her gaze landed on Xiao Jin. Just as he was about to open his mouth and hand over the mission to him, suddenly, he thought of something and closed his eyes. "I'll go by myself later." Between Xiao Jin and Peach, it would be best to have as little contact as possible. Right now, the poison in Xiao Yi's body could not be controlled. Xiao Jin was a little confused, but he did not stupidly ask why. Chapter 953. The headquarters of the Dark Forces were not in the Nirvana realm. Protector Snake did not know where it was. This was because every time they came to the Nirvana realm from the headquarters or returned from the Nirvana realm, they would be transported back and forth through the Forbidden Blood summoning. The Dark Forces were also very large, with a total of more than 30,000 people. Moreover, every one of them had a high profound rank, and they were all good at using forbidden techniques. The Dark Forces were also divided into different levels according to their abilities. Those with decent aptitude could join the Darkness Hall and become protectors or elders. Protectors were people who specialized in cultivating Xian Qi and raising their Xian grades. In modern terms, they were similar to warriors. The elders, on the other hand, specialized in all kinds of forbidden techniques. Similar to mages, they could both attack and support. Every protector and elder was named after an animal. For example, Guardian Ing, Elder Xiong, and Guardian Snake. Moreover, there was no limit to the number of guardian elders. As long as one's ability reached the required level and passed the test of the Darkness Hall, they would be able to obtain the Dark Hall's Guardian Elder medal. Wearing this emblem in the Dark Forces, they would be loved and supported by ordinary people who couldn't pass the test of the Dark Hall. Above the Guardian Party and the Elder Party, below the Lord, which was also below the King of Darkness, they were the strongest group of 4 chosen from the Law Protector Party. They were collectively known as the 4 Great Saint Techniques. The 4 strongest members of the Elders Association were collectively known as the 4 Great Saintesses. Seeing that everyone had more or less understood, Yiqing Luo asked everyone to have a good rest as they had to return to the academy tomorrow. Not only the director's matter, but also the bet which Yiqing Luo and Shengguan Liuli had set. For Yiqing Luo's sake, the brothers must recuperate well and train hard, striving to get first place in the interclass competition. Zhao Bo and the others couldn't interfere in the affairs of the academy, so they found an excuse to leave with their brothers. Mo Han Shang seemed to have thought of something as he called out to Zhao Bo, "When you and Lian Sheng went to the Mercenary Association, did the Blood Fiend Mercenary Group and Invincible Mercenary Group return?" Zhao Bo stopped in his tracks, shook his head, and immediately told him the data he had gathered. Currently, the mercenary groups that have completed their missions have a large number of low-level missions. However, only 153 mercenary groups had completed the intermediate and high-level missions. There are 30 high-level missions. Blood Demon Group and Invincible Group are not among the mercenary groups that completed high-level missions. Mo Han Shang's handsome face instantly revealed a smile as his clear eyes gazed towards Yiqing Luo excitedly. This challenge, the World Group has won. This challenge would definitely belong to Yiqing Luo. It was impossible for the Blood Demon Group and Invincible to complete the advanced rare quest. Furthermore, it's still a problem if these two groups will be able to return. Yiqing Luo's lips twitched, revealing a cold arc of ridicule. What do you mean? Mo Han Shang asked puzzledly. A cold intent flashed past Yiqing Luo's eyes. Returning means that these two groups have already become the Dark Force's tools. If they don't return, it means that these two regiments have already. He had been completely devoured by the Dark Forces. The Blood Demon Group and the Invincible Group must have made some sort of deal with Shangguan Liuli, which was why they had been targeting them ever since. Of course, they would borrow the power of the underworld to complete the high-level rare mission. Once it was done, it would be dead or alive. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.